Thanks to Ellie for asking me to share, who's not here, I know. I don't get nervous until that very last point when it's now hand the meeting over to you, and then I freeze, but it's my story and I can't really get it wrong. So I was raised in Ireland, in the south of Ireland with my mum. It was just the two of us, and she was an alcoholic. I spent a lot of time in the pubs. I'd leave school and go to the pub, do my homework in the pub, have my dinner there, and she would drive us home when she couldn't even stand down these back country roads, and I'd just clench my fists like this because I'm convinced we were going to crash into things. I have a lot of trauma around that actually, which I should probably deal with at some point because I'm a very bad passenger. But yeah, that was my life growing up. And when I was 14, I was introduced to ecstasy pills, and I loved them. I loved them from the very first one I took. I wanted to do as much as I could, and I had a few friends that would do them with me, and if they were there on a Saturday night, they'd do them. But for me, I had to get them on a Wednesday or a Thursday to make sure that I could get them, because I couldn't fathom not being able to get hold of them on the weekend. And so even back then, my thinking wasn't right. I remember I was at my friend's one evening doing our homework on a Wednesday, and I pulled these pills out of my bag, and she was like, "What are you doing?" I said, "Well, what if we can't get hold of them on a Saturday?" She was like, "So?" Like, I just couldn't understand her attitude around it. But that's how it was for me. My friends could have a couple of drinks and go home, but it was never like that. When I had that first drink or that first line, it set off that allergy, and I would do anything I could to get more. I had a daughter at a young age, so I got kicked out of school in Ireland. I was wild. My mum knew that I was doing drugs. She said, "I can't cope with you anymore. You're going to have to go and live with your dad in England." So shortly after, I met a guy, got pregnant after only 3 months, and had my first daughter at 17. And she was a blessing, of course, but it calmed me down. It really, really calmed me down, and I was a good mum. But I started to do speed in the mornings, a bit in my coffee, and there weren't really many consequences to that. My house was sparkling clean, and I was skinny, and it was great. That went on for every day for a couple of years, and then I started to do with the speed. Yeah, I couldn't have a day without it. And I remember one day I couldn't get hold of Annie, and I had ecstasy pills, just a bag of them that I do every now and then, and we were going shopping on a Saturday morning, and I had to take one of these ecstasy pills to go shopping because I had no speed, and I couldn't possibly just do an everyday task with my own thoughts in my own head. I was just so uncomfortable. That irritable, restless discontent is what I always felt if I didn't have a drink or a drug inside of me. So when I look back on my using, I don't remember many of the good times. I remember, but there were many good times. For many, many, many years, I enjoyed drinking and using, and there weren't. I didn't cause a lot of chaos. For me, it was a turning point during lockdown. That's when, like I think a lot of people struggled with lockdown. I didn't have to get up for work. I was furloughed. I didn't have to get the kids to school. I could start drinking earlier in the day because I would wait until I'd done the school run in the afternoons before I'd start drinking. But that got earlier and earlier, and that was just a very dark place. I just remember a lot of sadness and a lot of stress. I couldn't cope with being a mum. I went on to have 2 other children, so 3 kids, married the father of my first daughter, and we had three kids together, and that was He was a great guy. He is a great guy. He really is. We're divorced now, but he really supported me and helped me when I couldn't manage my own life. I was so chaotic. My life was unmanageable. I couldn't do the everyday tasks that were expected of a mum and a wife, and he done it all for me. He actually started selling drugs to fund my habit, which was great. But he would give me a certain amount at night, and when that was gone, I would sneak around trying to find the key to the safe, and the paranoia that came with it. I hear about people saying they twitch like the curtains, and for me it wasn't that. It was, I was convinced he was cheating on me. As soon as I had that first line, I'd have to get his phones, and not just, I'd have to get both of his phones, and not just go through calls and text messages like any normal person. I would go through internet searches, and I'd even calculate. There was a section, an app, which told me the amount of times he'd been on phone calls that week. So I'd calculate all of the received calls and the outgoing calls to see if he'd deleted any. Like, it was insanity. He'd go to sleep at 11, 12 at night, and I'd be sat there with these phones, and he'd wake up for work at 6 a.m. and I'd still be sat there with my table of Coke and bottles and just sat there on the phones. It was just insanity. I have got war stories, but I don't like to go into them. I don't feel that they're necessary. Drugs have all brought us to that same place, which is on our knees praying to God for help. And it was my best friend that had sat me down one night and said, in the most loving, kind and compassionate way, I think you should look at, your drug use and really change, because this isn't good for the kids. And it was that conversation that really made me think. Now, my husband had gone on every day, look at you, look at yourself. What are you doing to your kids? What are you doing to your nose? I was under the ENT because I was having to have surgery on my nose. And he'd find me on the bathroom floor. It really, really degrading times. But when my friend spoke to me, I decided to make that change. So I went to a CA meeting, my first one in Fareham. Everyone was so welcoming. I related to everything that was said. I done what was suggested. I got a sponsor, got a big book. I done everything, but I couldn't get it. I think I still clung to the hope that I could drink. I could, give it a certain amount of time, kick the Coke habit, and then I could drink, because drink was never my problem. So that's step one. I didn't admit I was powerless over all mind-altering substances. So for 12 months I was in and out, and I'd get to 30 days and I'd think, right, I can drink now, and I'd have a drink, and no, I couldn't drink. That was for 12 months I was doing that. And on the 21st of October 21, which is my clean date, I woke up hungover as hell after a session, but nothing significant had happened the night before. But I woke up and I felt that internal snap. I had had enough. I was at my rock bottom. But I mentioned this when I shared on Monday, that rock bottom for me could have got a hell of a lot worse, because I still had my husband, my kids, my home, my job even. All of those external things I clung to. But that rock bottom for me was internal. I'd hit that wall, and I just couldn't go on living like that. My hangovers were so bad that I couldn't get out of bed, so I was an every other day user, because I couldn't even lift my head off the pillow. So my kids would get in from school and I'd still be in bed. I wouldn't get up for anyone. As well as the Coke, I had an addiction to the sleeping pills. I had a huge collection. I used to buy them from the black market in their hundreds, and just take them, 10, 15 of them every night to knock myself out. So I built up quite a dependency to them. But from that 21st of October, I can honestly say that obsession was lifted, and I got to that point where I thought, I just can't do this anymore. And I done everything that was suggested. I got through the steps. I left my husband, which for a long time I had a lot of guilt around, because he'd seen me through all those years and looked after me and the kids. But walking away from, I realised I was in that relationship for 18 years because I was codependent and I couldn't manage life on my own. And walking away was the best thing for both of us. And we're both on really good terms. He's a great dad. And yeah, we still get on really, really well. So I moved out of the house. I rented a flat for a year. And I changed my jobs. I love my job. I was a graphic designer. And again, they stuck with me throughout my addiction and put up with a lot. So leaving, again, I had a bit of guilt, but I left after I'd sold the house. I had some money left over, so I was able to volunteer for a while just to see if I enjoyed working in the services, because I still do throw my everything into recovery. I live and breathe it. So I didn't know whether working in the services would be too much, but actually I love it. It's so rewarding. It's very different. There are other methods that we have to offer, but for me, I know the 12 steps it just works. It says in the book, rarely have we seen a person fail if they thoroughly follow our path. And if someone relapses, from what I find, my experience in the rooms, if someone relapses, there's something that they're not doing. Something. For me, I was doing everything I was supposed to, but I hadn't accepted that I was powerless. I still hung on to the hope that after a certain amount of time I'd be able to drink like a normal person. Maybe I would have done. Maybe I would have been able to do that for a few years. But I am an addict through and through, and I know that from even now my choices, my eating, I can eat like an addict. I can not eat and obsess over that. And yeah, I have to keep myself in check every day. I still have wobbles. I had a wobble last Monday where I decided I didn't want to go to a meeting where I've got a commitment. We've set up this new women's group in Gosport, which is well needed. I took a commitment there and I didn't want to go. I wanted to go to another meeting and I knew my sponsor would pull me up on it, so I decided to sack her off. I didn't want to be pulled up on stuff. And then the next day I decided I didn't want to get up for work. I wanted to stay in bed. And I strolled in an hour and a half late and made up some bullock story about how my daughter had a meltdown, and I was so convincing. It was the lies I used to tell in the past, and I thought, what am I doing? Where have these lies come from? And that was 24 hours of running on self-will. So I need to be accountable today. I need to be accountable to a sponsor, to my higher power. I don't know if there is anyone new in the rooms, but sponsees of mine, and I know people who have really struggled with the higher power. For me, I was raised Catholic. I was an altar girl, believe it or not, and went to mass every Sunday. And so for me, the higher power has always been my God. But if you struggle with that, it's just a power greater than yourself. And even if you don't know what it is, you don't need to. Just pray to something. And it's. I wake up every morning and I pray and I meditate. Meditation for me, it's something that I can't go a day without. If I do, I remember by midday, I'm reminded that I haven't done my meditation. If I don't pray one morning, am I going to relapse? No, probably not. But if I went a couple of days without prayer, those old behaviours would slip in. Inventory is something that I've always said I don't need it. It doesn't help me. I'm a good person. And I don't do bad things anymore, and I don't need inventory. But I went about 5 days without my inventory, and I was full of resentment, and I don't often get resentful towards people, Not anymore, but I was full of resentment during these 5 days, and my sponsor once again pulled me up and said it's because you're not doing your inventory. So everything is there for a reason. All of these suggestions, they're tried and tested, and you'll find if you don't do them all, it's your behaviours slip. It's how my life is so different today. And like I said earlier, I didn't lose a lot from my using, but how I feel internally is I'm content with life. I'm calm. People can come and talk to me with no judgment. My daughter has autism and ADHD, and I really struggled from when she was a tiny baby. I really struggled to deal with her, and I used to use and drink on it. Oh, poor me, I've got this baby that won't stop crying and won't sleep. And something I've never shared before, and I don't know why it's just come to me to share it, but I used when I was pregnant, and I've never openly admitted that to anyone, and I have a lot of guilt around whether my using has contributed to her issues. But it's done. There's nothing I can do, but I am the best parent I can be to her today. I am consistent. She has structure and routine, and that's what she needs, and that's what she craved growing up. For a really long time, I didn't give her that, because I would either be so hungover or so high that I would let my kids do as they liked. I would let them order takeaways every night for dinner, and they didn't have to clean their room or do their homework. And that's been really hard for my 2 older children to deal with, because that's the mum they always knew. And then what felt like for them overnight, I became spiritually well, and I became a better parent, a parent that I should have always been. That wanted them to do well at school and to tidy their room and to help out around the house with chores. And when me and their dad split up, he's still in that chaos and that madness, not nowhere near as bad as I was, but he still smokes weed and has that spiritual malady, and allows them to do as they like. They get takeaways for dinner every night and have no chores to do, no homework. They can get in at whatever time they want. So they choose to live with him, which it is what it is. I can't change that, but I just have to be consistent and the best parent, and I know I'm doing right by them. I still have a really close relationship. I speak to them every day, see them numerous times a week. But for my youngest, with autism, she thrives on that structure and routine, and she's doing so well. How long have I got left? Okay. So it's if you're new, just do the stuff that's suggested. It's changed my life so much. I'm so happy with how things are going, and they say rocketed into the 4th dimension of existence, and I really have been. Externally, it's still quite the same, but just that internal feeling of peace and happiness, it's incredible. So thank you for having me. It's great to share.
Lovely.